"This is Florence," I said to a wandering newcomer. "This is where your dreams will come true, and anything you thought was impossible will be made possible with God's help," I added. I grinned as I sauntered away. It was a blistering summer morning in the happening city. Masses of people gathered in the streets to hear philosophers, buy goods, and rush to work. This is my home, and where I have created some of my most inspired artworks. The hustle and bustle on the streets seems never ending, just as the changing of the fashions and new ideas spread. Every day is fresh, with fresh faces and changes. Recently, one of the most beautiful aspects of our city has finished being built. It will shine like a beacon in the center of the city for onlookers to admire for ages. You cannot help but be proud when your city has its own cathedral. This morning is a particularly good one for me. I have been asked by Arflino di Cambio to paint a mural in the top corner of this beautiful church. It might not be a prime position for admirers, but I am only an aspiring painter. I quicken my pace and mistakenly bump into someone who I think is a stranger, until I take a second look. I recognize the stranger. He is a friend of mine named Antonio. He smiles. "Oh, hey, Donatello. Today's the day, right?" "Yep, here goes nothing," I reply. "Don't spill your paint on the bishop," he chuckles. "Yeah, I say in annoyance. "See you at dusk," I yell as I run away, leaving Antonio shaking his head in disbelief. I set foot on the first shiny step as lightly as possible. I do not want to damage the perfection. After taking the longest amount of time to walk up stairs in my life, I enter the foyer. The sound of the chorus, the look of the flawless architecture, and the inspiringly beautiful paintings quickly overwhelm me. I suddenly drop all my paintbrushes on the ground with a loud thud. If that was not mortifying enough, I hear the booming voice of the bishop behind me. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" "I am Donatello Ferrari. I have come here to paint a section in the top left corner of the main hall for Signor Cambio." "Proceed," he replies with a suspicious-looking eye. As he walks away, I realize he is the bishop, and not a man I would want to anger. I enter the main hall and look at the scaffolding. It is probably the least embellished part of this entire building, but it still looks incredible to me. Once I reach the top left corner of the room, I stare blankly at the wall for what seems like ages. I can barely be seen from the ground. I feel in my own world. I wouldn't dare make a mistake of this precious canvas. I begin painting baby Jesus and the Virgin Mary. At first I am anxious and careful, and I focus so hard my strokes become shaky. I take a few deep breaths and get into my regular motion. It becomes second nature. I feel serene at this height, like I am painting for God. Without warning, the bishop shoves the doors open. He breaks my concentration, and my brush plummets to the floor a second time. "What is your name again?" he calls. "Donatello Ferrari, Signor," I call back, hoping he didn't notice me drop my brush a second time. "Donatello," he begins, "you must leave in 2 hours, Signor. I have my private prayer time in which no one can interrupt me." Something about that man makes me feel uncomfortable. It wasn't just his status or power. He seems like he is hiding something. I convince myself that these feelings are ridiculous, and I shouldn't disrespect a bishop with thoughts like those. I continue my painting with a new brush. The colors in my limited aspiring painter's palette seem brighter and richer here. I dip into the red for the background. It slides onto the wall, making smooth crimson strokes. Every color appears more vivid and stronger than ever. I soon become so at peace and relaxed that I close my eyes and fall into a deep sleep. I awake much later to find myself in the same position, and with yellow paint on my forehead. I hear talking below me. By the look of the sky, it had been long past 2 hours. I look down to see where the voices are coming from, and see the bishop with a woman much younger than him. She seemed less than thrilled to be in his presence. "Please, no, we can't," the woman says. "Yes, we can. No one will know," he replies with fury. "I'm begging you, please." The bishop grabs her face and forcefully begins to kiss her. She begins to scream. I cannot remain silent any longer. I stop caring about how much trouble I'll get in for still being in here, let alone shouting at a bishop. I open my mouth when another man barges in the doors. It is Antonio. I suddenly remember that I was supposed to meet him in the square at dusk. It is long past dusk, so he must be coming here to look for me. I wave my arms at him in silence, making his name with my lips, but he cannot see me. By the look on his face, I realize that the woman the bishop is forcing himself on must be Isabella. Antonio has been in love with Isabella for years, yet she has never shown interest in him. Antonio yells, "Stop! This isn't right, Señor!" Antonio, being slightly smaller and much intimidated by the bishop, is reluctant to get any closer. "Antonio, help!" Isabella screams. "You cannot speak to me that way unless you want a life in jail," scoffs the bishop. He forces another kiss on Isabella. Rage fills Antonio as he runs to save her. The bishop swings a punch at Antonio, knocking him to the ground. In defense, Antonio kicks the bishop back. A brutal fight breaks out and Antonio seems to be losing. Unexpectedly, the doors swing open once more, and in walk the Archbishop and Arnolfo di Cambio. "What in the world is going on in here, Bishop?" the Archbishop roars extremely angrily. "Oh, Señor, thank God you're here. This man tried to attack me," cries the bishop. "No, this is not true. The bishop forced himself on this woman, and I was only trying to protect her," exclaims Antonio. Meanwhile, Arnolfo di Cambio glances up to me and shouts, "Donatello? Donatello Ferrari, is that you?" "Si, Señor, I have been painting here all day," I shout back. Everyone directs their attention towards me. "Who is this man?" asks the Archbishop. "He is a local painter I asked to paint a small mural up there," replies Cambio. Antonio smiles at me and shakes his head again in disbelief. "So you witnessed this whole entire scene?" asks the Archbishop. "Si, Señor, and the bishop was trying to force himself on Isabella. She was screaming and crying when Antonio barged in and tried to help. He was only protecting her when the bishop punched him first. The fight only continued because Antonio needed to defend himself," I replied, still shouting. "Is this true?" the Archbishop asked Isabella. She nods, still in shock. "He does seem more beat up than you, Bishop, and you know if you really have done this to this woman here, it is a sin," states the Archbishop in disappointment. "No, Señor, please, you must believe me. You cannot believe this commoner," begs the bishop. "What do you think, Señor Cambio?" asked the Archbishop. Well, I did hire Donatello Ferrari, and I do believe he is an honest man, Señor. He would not lie," replies Cambio. "Well then, I am stripping you from your position, and you are being sent into exile," firmly states the Archbishop. "No!" shouts the bishop as he begins to chase after Cambio. A group of men push open the doors and carry the bishop away. Isabella instantly runs into Antonio's arms. He winks at me, and they walk out of the church hand in hand. The Archbishop and Cambio thank me, and Cambio calls, "Not bad for a first day, Signor Ferrari." "Please, it was nothing," I reply, as they exit the cathedral. I smile to myself. Now there is only one thing left to figure out: how to get down.